Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode. It's going to be an emotional episode because we're going to be talking about divorce. We're going to be talking about the LA fires. We're going to be talking about how to rebuild your life during your marriage and unfortunately sometimes after your marriage. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Joe Nicasio. Without Joe Nicasio, we would not be together right now. And at the end, I'm going to tell you guys something. Me and Joe are working together to drop something amazing called the Business Battle Plan, taking your business from thought to profit in 90 days. And I'll talk about it at the end. So my brother Nathan, we've been friends now a couple months now. I love everything he talks about. And today it's so apropos with everything that's going on in the world today. So Nathan, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks for having me. And thanks to Joe for introducing the two of us.
You are like the coolest looking dude, bro. You're somebody I could just see myself hanging out with, having a cup of coffee, sitting around a campfire, just shooting the shit. So, Nathan, I just want to say thank you. My first question right off the bat, what is your definition of resiliency?
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. And if we were sitting around a campfire, we might have to have a little song beforehand. But since this is a virtual campfire, I'm just going to say that my definition of resiliency has to be related to what I would call a master learning disposition, which is the ability to persist throughout the most challenging circumstances. And that's something that we can encourage for our children by recognizing, their strengths and their abilities to keep on going when things get really, really difficult. If you have that ability, if you have the ability to fail and keep on trying, then you can overcome any obstacle. So that's the key to resiliency for me.
All right, so Nathan, let's hop back in the Wayback Machine. Let's hop into DeLorean. Tell us a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become such a force like you are today?
Ooh, where I come from? Well, I come from the middle of nowhere, the inside of everything, but really born on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevadas on Paiute Shoshone land in Bishop, California, and lived all over the world in different countries, 3 different continents. I worked for the United States military childcare system and been an early childhood educator for more than 30 years. So this really, shapes everything, for me. Thinking about, have you ever heard about that thing, like everything you learned in life, or there was a book a while ago,
Yep.
It's about like, you learned in kindergarten. Alles ich habe im Leben gewohnt, ich habe from Star Trek gelernt. No, that's a different one. That's the German language version of everything I needed to know in life I learned from watching Star Trek. But no, really, we learn this in early childhood: how to treat people, how to share, how to help other people. And so that's what I've been that's the field I've been working in. How did I become such a force? Listen, okay, talk about the Wayback Machine. All right, when I was 5 years old, I was free-range childhood here, Long Beach, California. Back in the day, my mom, let me walk out to the city park, and there were some big kids there at the park, and they were picking on a kid who was younger than me. Big kids, like, who knows, 12, 13 years old. And I remember, like I was 5, and I'm saying, like, stop, what are you doing? And that was the moment, the catalyst for me as a child, thinking to myself, like, the way that the big kids are treating the little kids, that's not okay. And when I get to be a big kid, I'm never going to treat little kids like that. So my whole life has just been, a series of it's been a process of learning how to advocate for young people to make sure that their voices are heard.
I love it. So I want to say, Jamian, thank you for showing up. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Okay, so let's talk about childhood, because I grew up in in an abused household. And pretty much everything I've learned, like you said, is I learned from the age of 6. I learned how to treat people. I learned how to not to treat people. I learned not to bully, to protect bullies, protect people from bullies. But also, I think, we should teach our kids to, if me and you disagree on a subject, we should go sit, have a cup of coffee, break some bread, and talk about things. Because I believe that 98% of the world's problems could be solved by just sitting down, talking to each other, not at each other, breaking bread, and just finding out what the reason is. Why do you feel that way? And I will tell you why I feel that way. Because I've interviewed a lot of people, especially during the elections. I'm like, well, why are you a Democrat, or why are you a Republican? Why are you a moderate? I don't know. My grandmother and my grandfather were, so am I. But we didn't have that mean back and forth. We're just like, well, I'm trying to understand you. You're trying to understand me. So how important do you think communication is, especially today?
Wow, it's huge. And you touch on, when you talk about politics, I think, we've had for a number of years, there's this idea of identity politics. And when you talk about, there's two ways of thinking about identity, right? On the one hand, you could think about it as this is something that is innate to a person, and another way you could look at it is that it's something that is conditioned. But when we talk about, so I call myself the learning story coach, and the reason for that is because I'm helping people to notice what their children are doing. Notice what their behavior is, to recognize what they might be learning, and then to ask questions and engage with their child and extended family members about what the child might be ready to learn about next. And I call that the process of positive identity formation. But I met a gentleman the other day who pointed out to me that could be part of the problem. That when we think about identity, that could be something that stops the conversation. It might be even more helpful, and I'm considering this, to think about, like, what is it that you identify with? Finding out through people, like, well, what is it about being a Democrat or a Republican? What's important to you about that? And then when we start getting at people's values, then we start finding some places that we could have some common ground, and to explore our how we can all move forward together.
And talking about teachings, I'm a man of God. I love reading the Bible. I love reading the scriptures. I love reading the Quran. I love reading the Book of Mormon. I'm a guy that loves to be educated. But what I love about the Bible, and I read the red words, is Jesus was a storyteller. He taught in parables. And I believe that, even in business, stories sell, other things just tell. So how important it is in life, and to teaching our kids that, like, I can teach my son, your uncle did this or did that. And then, but he can always go back to his uncle and say, did you do this or do that? But if I said, I had a friend, Frankie, one time that did this, there's no way he can go back on it. But it's also a way to teach kids in story form, instead of just telling them what to do. Say, listen, my friend Frankie did this. and this is what happened to them. You might want to try something different. So how important is it, instead of telling your children what to do, kind of giving a parable or giving a story about what they might want to do?
Well, yeah, I think that's the art of parenting, really, is to find out how to tell a story that is so good that they say, wait, is that a true story? Now, but it should be a true story. And I think when we involve children in the storytelling process, then we invite them to make, it's like choose your own adventure. I work with parents in developing social stories for their children to teach pro-social behavior, but also the story of who a child is demonstrated through their actions. And when we see a child, maybe writing a letter for their grandparent, or even cleaning up the table after dinner, and we're able to describe to them the impact of their actions, like when you clear up the table like that, or when you write to your grandparent, that shows that that's demonstrating that you care about them. And well, somehow I seem to have lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry about that, Richard. But
no, I think it's great. But also, I have 3 kids, and I'm very proud of all 3 of my kids. My one son just got a notification that he made the dean's list at college, and my other son just graduated college. But I also got a 12-year-old, and a lot of her identity now is what people think. She thinks what people think about her is her identity. Where for me, I tell everybody, I'm who God made me. I'm made in his image. So I'm perfect. Not saying I'm perfect, but I know who I am. But I think with social media now, people start making up the way who they want to be, or they think that whoever they are seen as is who their identity is. So let's talk about that, because I think that's very important, especially for parents that have kids, younger kids, and teenagers.
So the problem is everyone is so focused on the outside for reinforcement, to feel good. We want to get, good, we want to have likes. There's this whole thing about the dopamine that we experience when we get reinforcement on social media.
Yep.
And, we can use this same, it's like a natural tendency for a people to, adjust to their environment, to get to be able to belong. And so there's a great need, we have a desire to belong in our family, and to be cared for. I mean, partly it's survival, but when you tell a story to a child that is a true story, that describes their actions and how they are a reflection of the noble verbs and virtues of their ancestors, of the people in their community, that they represent their community values. I used to do this when I was teaching preschool. I would sing songs, and I would sing the names of the children in the room, and I would describe the things that they're doing, and you'd be amazed at how their ears would perk up. They would, oh wait, he's singing about me. But this is something that it encourages a positive relationship, a feedback loop, where when they hear about the strengths inside of their actions, they want to hear more about that. So they will continue to do more of those actions to get more of that feedback, but also they're building a relationship with you. When you were talking about your daughter and she's on the honor roll, right?
Yep.
What was the concern though, that she's going to be reliant upon external feedback? Is that
well, the reason is because I am old school. I'm going to be 56 next month. If I'm paying for my children's phones, I want to know who they're talking to. I want to know who they're texting. I want to be up in their business because I want to make sure that I take care of my kids, because on average, 5,000 children every day attempt suicide in the United States. So I don't want her to become a statistic. And I hear so much about how, who you are online. It's so important. Instead of like when I wake up every morning, I kiss my wife, I kiss my daughter, and I tell her, "Hey, beautiful, good morning. I love you. Daddy loves you." I want to make sure that she knows that she's getting validation from me, and not just the interweb. You know what I'm trying to say? And I think a lot of parents don't know either what their kids are on. They don't even know what a TikTok or what a YouTube is. So for me, I want to make sure that I'm there for my kids so I don't bury my kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I just think as parents, we need to get a little bit more involved in our children's online world, because it's a different world if you don't know what's actually out there.
Well, that could be very challenging, even from the very beginning, certainly, I just think about during the pandemic time, gosh, everybody was online, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, the rise of influencers, and influencers they're in the business of getting people to pay attention to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that what they have to influence is in the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
All along, we know that adolescents are, in the process of finding out who they are, and they're asking questions and exploring. And sometimes that means that they want to find out how they're different from their parents, that they're looking to friends and the wider community to, for some reinforcement of, or some, for some insight. And it used to be, before the rise of social media, we didn't know what was happening out in the community when our kids weren't with us, when they were out, on the playground, miles from our house. We might not see that. So we can't be with our kids all the time. But it is concerning to think that they can get online and be part of a community that is really it could be a wedge in the family dynamic. I'm just thinking about this business, like we've had in the public awareness, there's been a exponential increase in the awareness of transgender people in the last few years. And, I read a book about this, and one of the books that is written talks about how before 2016, there was no real, there wasn't much in the literature regarding gender dysphoria in terms of teenage girls. Mostly when we talked about gender dysphoria, it was preschool boys who were the primary primary people who are experiencing this. But I think with when you think about teenage girls and how they influence each other, it's been since 2016 that teenage girls have been, diagnosed more than anyone with gender dysphoria, and then they're online talking to each other about this. It kind of amplifies the effect. So, so I think really, before when we talk about monitoring our children's online behavior and activities, that might be a good place to start. Just talking with them about so what do you think is influencing you these days? What are those people saying? And this is how I got off. Well, I didn't get off. Again, we're talking about who are we? We come from a long line of people, like going all the way back to time immemorial, a heartbeat that has been passed on to us. It's this invisible spiritual pulse that is the human family. And this doesn't really have to do with, like you say, Democrat, Republican, male or female. This has to do, it's like the light. It's the light of I just think that is our true identity. And
and the reason why I wanted to bring this up, I want to move it forward a little bit, is people that are LGBTQ have a higher rate of suicide than the average person. But I wanted to also talk about, because we're talking about identities, and we're losing up to 50 veterans and first responders a day taking their own lives because a lot of them got so wrapped up in being Sergeant so-and-so, Colonel so-and-so, Sergeant so-and-so. And then when you have to hang up that uniform for the last time and you're no longer that thing, and I know this firsthand because I'm a 2-time suicide attempt survivor. And the reason I tried to take my life is because I spent 23 years being Sergeant Kaufman. And when they told me, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman, well, who am I? It's something you talked about earlier. Who is Richard? Who am I? And when you don't know who you are, it's a scary place to be. So talk about identities and finding out who you really are. Because somebody once told me, and I forget who it was, I've read so many books and so many audio books, but somebody says, you are who you are when you're alone. That's who you really are. So how do you go about finding out who you are, especially after spending time in the military or as a first responder or an athlete or a teacher that can no longer teach? What do you do when you're no longer that thing? And how do you find yourself, your real self?
That's a huge question. And I'm going to just share with you just something I've been thinking about lately. In terms, you always hear a lot about, we hear about these days about manifestation.
Yes.
Like I'm a master manifester.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So, but where does this manifestation come from? Like what is the power source, or what is it? What is the mechanism? How does that work? And while I do think that perhaps, there are areas that each of us could work on to get our thinking, to have a growth mindset and to think thoughts that will, create results that we want to, that are more positive results. The focus is on what is on the outside again. And what would it be like to change the ratio, to change the ratio between the manifest and the unmanifest, because we have an experience. I mean, I think as human beings, there's more on the inside than can ever possibly be expressed on the outside. So all of this push towards, you could call it, the push towards manifestation, push towards, creating evidence of our, creating. It's really got the. Well, let me just say this. There's like a point between what is outside and what is inside, and if we can withdraw into the rich interior, land of the inside, and make as little claims as possible on the outside, that's going to generate a different kind of relationship with success and failure, and we're not going to be so attached to certain roles. And when the roles change, we're going to have flexibility and be able to move with our child as our child changes.
And also, don't you think that the mind is an amazing thing? I mean, the brain hasn't really changed much since Mr. Carnegie was around back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And something that he talked about was, and I love the quote, your obsessions become your possessions. We've just found words for it now, the reticular activating system in the brain, using NLP. But I believe, we're talking about manifestation, I can tell as an adult, I have never done anything that I didn't think about first. Ever. It's never happened. I've never eaten a piece of cake without thinking about, hey, I'm going to eat that piece of cake. But I think that because your mind has the reticular activating system, that whatever we look for, we're going to find. Whether that's success, failure, happiness, sadness. Like if I know that I'm going to go out today and I'm going to hear a certain kind of music, say whether it's rap, country, whatever. And if I'm walking in the city and there's 50 million kinds of music, I'm going to focus on the rap music because that's what I said I was going to find today. So how important it is, talking about manifestation, is training your mind using your RAS to find happiness, to find health, to find success. How important is it to train our mind? The greatest computer in the world, better than ChatGPT.
Well, it seems like it would be pretty important. And I'm just thinking about like energy loss, like leakage, like with a strong mind, then we have greater control over our choices. Like you might not have a piece of cake before you think about eating a piece of cake, but maybe you don't have to do everything that you think about, right? So there's a process of well, it's an uncomfortable process because we have sometimes we have things that we want that may not be the best thing for us. And if we give ourselves to all of those things, then we're giving away, we're dissipating energy. And so we're doing, instead of being like Joe Nicasio might teach, to be being laser focused on, what it is that we're here to do, our energy is spreading in 100 different directions. And so we don't really go anywhere. So this is an interesting thing about the mind, is that we can think about anything. But this isn't about, well, what I'm saying is it's not about, using our brain power to figure things out. It's actually a process of subtraction, where we align with our values and think about what we really want to dedicate our energy to.
Yeah, and because I talk to a lot of people. Like I said, I'm a big reader. I've read over 6,000 books. I got 18 books going right now, plus 2 audio books and an audio course. But when I tell everybody, have you read the book Work and Go Rich? Nobody's read that book, but a lot of people have read Think and Grow Rich. And there's a reason why Napoleon Hill said, you have to, even Mr. Carnegie says, in order to do anything great, you have to think. And I love the word focus, follow one course until successful. I love that. So I think that whether it's looking for a mate, whether it's looking for a spouse, whether it's in business, that we have to focus on what we want and not what we don't want. Because let's talk about, we're going to get into the whole divorce thing.
Okay.
I tell everybody, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I think it was on Reddit. And I said, listen, ladies, if you like a bad boy, your husband eventually can become a bad man, and guess who's going to be getting divorced? So for me, I think it takes nothing to get a marriage license, but it takes 2 years to get a degree in something. And I believe that we need to put more thought into who we're marrying, why we're marrying that person, than we should any other thing. And one thing I think we need to know or learn before we get married is that person's love language. Because like for me and my wife, we've been married 15 years. She knows me for 40. For the first 13 years, I bought her flowers every week, just because it was a Tuesday. Until one day she's like, honey, I love the thought, but I don't like flowers. And then I'm like, oh shit, let me go back and read the 5 love languages. And now I know she likes to do things, create things, spend time together. So that's what we do instead. But I had to learn her love language. And I think if you don't know your love language before you get into a relationship, I think you're bound for not having a successful life. And also, I believe, like I said, I've had 2 practice marriages. I love my bride. She's my best friend. She's everything. But I have to realize that my love for her, it's not an emotion. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to my wife, because I know there's days she hates me, but I know she loves me. So I think those are 2 important things. There's finding out your spouse's love language before you get married. And then that love is not an emotion, that it's more of a commitment. What are your thoughts on those 2 things going into marriage?
So about finding out their love language. Yeah. And love is, a commitment. Yeah. I think about that sometimes too. Well, let me just talk about the love piece just here for a minute. Like, to love, it's a verb. It's an action. It's something that might take some effort. You have to continue to apply that effort, throughout all kinds of changing circumstances. I mean, like, right? Shakespeare, he said, love is not love that alters when it alteration finds, nor bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. So it's not like just feel good. It's not a feel good thing. Well, I mean, sure. I guess we could say love is all, could be an emotion, but we have to show up for it. And when you say commitment, I mean, I just think, what is the ultimate commitment but a vow? When we take a vow, that is something that changes our lives. Committing to it's like committing to the best in ourselves. Now, we might not always keep the vow, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't need to rededicate ourselves to that. Like Gandhi talked about the process of vow taking, the ethics of vow taking. He said, just because something is difficult to do doesn't mean, well, actually, I'm paraphrasing here. Gandhi did not say this. What he did say was that no general ever won a war by saying he would, remain vigilant, as long as he could. That's not the way we do things. If you want to win a war, you wholeheartedly commit, and maybe you fall short, but that doesn't mean that the ideal that you are committed to is you don't bring down the ideal. We have to just strengthen our own ability to live according to our ideals. So yeah, love is I mean, they say it's the measure of all things, right? So finding a love language that, in essence, I mean, this is the same thing. We talk about temperament, like that every person, there's been some research for, well, almost 60 years, 70 years now, the Stella Chess, the research on temperament, that the idea that there are certain, that a person's natural tendency to respond in a given situation can be observed from a very early age. So, some people are they warm up to strangers really quickly. Some people have, and some people don't. Some people are slow to warm. Some people, might, have really, regular biological rhythms, and some people, might, sleep at all different times of the day, or this sort of thing. There are these characteristics that are unique to individuals that remain consistent over a lifetime, is what the research shows. So, if that's the case, just like with the love languages, we don't want our children or our spouse, but specifically children. The idea isn't that they should adapt to our style of care. The idea is that as parents, we are responsible to find out what it is that is that communicates with that person, that and goodness of fit in a relationship comes when a person is conscious about what the needs of the other person, or the natural tendency of the other person, or the love language of the other person, and finding a way to speak to that person so that they can be supported.
Okay. For me, in my relationship, I'm the empath. I'm the one that likes to be hugged, kissed, and I'm an emotional guy. I'm a guy that like to hold hands and stuff like that. And my wife, she's different. But I love her for who she is, because she has her things that I love about her. And I never think about things that bother me about her. I always focus on the things that she's great at, things that make me happy, things that she does. She's such a great mother, a great wife. She does everything great. But I think a lot of times people, when they get married, they think that marriage is 50-50. And for me, I call bullshit, because about 3 months ago, when I almost took my own life, I was at 0 and my wife was at 100 when I was laying in bed and she had her arms wrapped around me and I'm just crying and wailing and weeping. I was at 0. She was at 100. And there's certain days where I may be at 75, she's at 25. So I think the notion of, marriage is 50-50, it's bullshit. Because sometimes it's 0 to 100. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, wow. I'm just thinking that you're blowing me away. That's really, really, I'm thinking about everything that all of the people that I've been interacting with over the last several years are going through some really, really difficult things. What are my thoughts on the 0 to 100, the 50-50?
Yeah.
It's almost like, I just want to say, Richard, I'm really sorry. That sounds really hard. Like that was just a minute ago. And like really 3 months ago wasn't that long ago. And it's just amazing to me to think like how awesome you are, how grateful I am to you for providing this forum for me to share and sharing this with all, the whole idea of the Virtual Momentum podcast and putting this out into the world for everyone. I would say, even though you've described yourself as being at 0 just a few months ago, like for the people that this podcast is going out to, you are the 100. You are giving, you are setting an example for all of the folks who are listening here who might be going through some very difficult times, to know that there's somebody else who has been through some difficult times himself, is going through some difficult times, and that everything can change. But we do need each other. We need to show up for each other that way. And I'm so glad that you're here showing up for me. But I sometimes think about it in terms of taking responsibility, right? Which is hard to talk about when you feel like a 0. Oh boy. I mean, why would you be thinking about taking your own life unless you were feeling like your life this is really super hard to talk about because I've got this feeling inside of, it's a feeling. I can't really talk about it in words, but, and when I say you can't talk about it in words, I mean, like the words are a lie. We just use words to be able to give you the idea. Listen, I know that I am valuable. I know that there's a minimum sense of dignity that I have, that every day when I wake up gives me the ability to make it through the rest of the day. That if I didn't have that minimum sense of dignity, I would not be able to make it through the day. So that being said, I want to tell you the lie of my feelings, which is like a truth, which is that all of us sometimes feel, listen, I don't know about all of us. I'm just saying, when I heard you talking about what you've been through in the past few months, I felt my own worthlessness. I felt just deep inside of myself that, maybe I'm not enough. Maybe this isn't good enough. I mean, that's something to ponder, right? But again, let's talk about the manifest and the unmanifest. That's like it's a tangible, palpable feeling. Like you think about your life, maybe you think about some mistake you made or something that didn't happen that you wanted to have happen, or this is, and you put your awareness on these things. What comes up is a feeling, and the feeling could then, it could be the guide for your action. But I find that in shifting the ratio between the manifest and the unmanifest, like, oh, I haven't manifested enough. It's like, okay, let's withdraw into the part that doesn't have to manifest. Like, give yourself a break here for a minute. Give myself a break, and rest and reset and focus. And when we have that ability to discipline our mind and withdraw from the identification with these perhaps negative feelings or negative thoughts, or thoughts of failure, thoughts of worthiness. Yeah, when we can, basically, it's just like stilling the mind, stilling the thoughts, and that's going to give us the chops to make it through some more.
Yep. So, and I can tell you the exact moment that I decided to take my own life. It was because I've helped hundreds of thousands of people, but it was the 3 people that I couldn't save that ate at me every day. And it was right after my friend, a police officer, right after we got off the phone, he took his own life. That's what got me. But then after that, and I started praying and talking to people, I found a way to insurance proof that'll never happen again. I'll never take my own life. And the way I did that is, the people that follow me know I wrote my own obituary, and I keep it in my wallet, and I look at it every day I go to the store, and it says, "Here lies Richard Kaufman, loving husband, loving father, loving friend, 5-time best-selling author, speaker, blah, blah, blah." Mm-hmm. But if I don't live up to that man that's in my wallet and my obituary, that's what I have to live up to every day. So if I take my own life, I'm not being the loving father. Mm-hmm. I'm not being the loving friend. I'm not being the loving husband if I take my own life. So that's the way I ensured that I'll never take my life again. And I've heard a lot of people say, wow, you wrote your own obituary. Like, yeah, now I have something to live for. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I know a couple of people that have done it, and they said it changed their whole philosophy on life.
Well, I like that a lot. Now, it's interesting that you have it in your wallet. Yep. And it's inside of your wallet. But the thing is, and then your wallet, maybe perhaps it's in your pocket or something. But I think about that. That's like you're keeping it safe. It's like your capital. That's your ultimate capital. That's the ultimate unmanifest. Okay? Like, you have a vow. You've made a commitment that you will live, that is your life. That is how you're defining your life. But it's in your pocket, it's in your heart. And then everything else that is outside, that's all the manifestation part of it. But the most important thing, more important than the manifestation, is the unmanifest, is the secret that you've got in, and there's got to be some symbolism there somehow. It's in your wallet. It's like,
well, this happened something else happened about 2 months ago. The only reason I wanted to talk was because about the wallet. We went to Atlantic City for the weekend with the family, and my wallet must have dropped out, and I lost my wallet.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And the only things that were coming to my mind is, because we're going to talk about the LA fires. If I would have lost my wallet, it would have had my sobriety coin in it. That's been 36 years now. I got from my first meeting. I have it in my wallet. Pictures of my wife and my kids, and my obituary. And I felt if I would have lost that, I don't care about losing the house, the cars, and all that stuff. But if I would have just lost my wallet, I felt like I would have lost everything. Because like we were talking about earlier, it's those things that are the most important. It's all in one little wallet. It's not in the big house. It's not in the jacuzzis. It's not in the cars. It's not in the boats. It's in that little wallet. And I think, like for me, I rather create memories than have things. I mean, things are nice. I like things. I have things. But I think I'd rather go to Vegas and go see Barry Manilow and watch my wife's face light up and go on one of those gondola rides. I'd rather do that than buy another car. You know what I mean? Because those are the memories. And we could lose everything in a fire, but if we have memories and if we have pictures, we'll always have our memories. And I think that's so important, right? That's what we were talking about earlier.
Right. And were we talking about this before we came on?
I think it was. It was right before, yeah.
Okay, so because we were talking about the people in the LA fires and something that I had read, where people were saying that, just be glad that you have your life. Everything else is just stuff. But then it's this idea of right behind life is proof of life. The idea that we existed, that we and all those memories, all of those things, the photographs of the times that we've had, those are so. I mean, that's something that we can share with other people. That's what learning stories are ultimately. Is a way to remember, who we are, what we've been, how we've taken care of each other, the things that we've overcome. And it's an iterative process where we continue to ask the question of like, what are we ready to learn about next, that is grounded in something tangible, something that we can have our child sit on our lap and have that close connection with them and read to them the stories about how awesome they are and ask them, like being so awesome, what are you ready to learn about next? That that's like what we do with our life. Now, you do that often enough, you develop, perhaps we could call it spiritual capital, because it's invisible, because it's something that, like my Nana would say, like education, they can't take that away from you. Like once you've been through those experiences, they become part of you. This is what identity formation is about. It's about these repeated experiences. So even if you had lost your wallet, I can imagine how painful that would be. But you say, without that you would lose everything. I would just challenge you to say, like, you haven't lost those 36 years of sobriety. And you haven't lost the memory currently. I mean, I know like life isn't over yet, but you still remember the look on your wife's face when you took her to see Barry Manilow. So,
well, because I've had a lot of experiences in my life. I've lived 3 lives, I think, in my life, and 2 of the most things that would really touches me is when my grandmother was in a nursing home, as soon as she died, she wasn't even cold yet, and they were taking stuff off the walls and moving her out to get the next person in. And then my Uncle Bob, he was a 4th grade dropout, and retired as a multimillionaire. And he had stage 4 cancer. And he told me, Rich, I got all this money, but I can't buy back a single day. Enjoy time with your family. Enjoy the moments. So for me, you know, the way I live my life, my priorities are God, family, friends, and then business. And if it's anything not to do with those 4 things, I'm probably going to say no, because I want to be laser focused. But also, when I'm with my family, I want to be present. I believe in present. Like when my wife talks to me, whether she's asking a question, if we're in the same room, I put my whatever I'm doing down, I take my glasses off, and I look at her, and I let her know that I'm there 100%. I'm listening to what she says, because I believe that your family deserves your presence more than your presence. And I think that's one of the main reasons that a lot of people get divorced is because we don't have that focus like we did when we were first dating. We're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see her. I can't wait to go out for dinner. I can't wait to date her again. And like I had lunch with TD Jakes, and something he told me, he said, Rich, if you don't date your wife, another man will. And I believe that because we don't have that presence in our marriage, that's why a lot of us lead to divorce. What are your thoughts on presence?
So, yeah, I'm just thinking about my children's mom and how she expressed to me that she didn't feel that she was that she didn't feel cherished by me. And I think that was the end of our marriage, just like you say. So, I mean, it's heartbreaking to think that we might be having a life here together and we might be missing it at the same time. I know that I didn't always take off my glasses and give my full attention to her. And she literally told me that wasn't working. Nobody needs to tell you this, but I'm just remembering what you're talking about reminds me of that. But today we were going to talk about how to build a family legacy or keep it. And legacy, I mean, legacy for anybody, any younger viewers, younger than me, like I never really thought about legacy, for future generations, before I had in terms of like passing on generational wealth or that sort of thing. Mostly what I thought about before I had children was about giving my children opportunities that I didn't necessarily have, and creating a family that carried on the work of all of my ancestors, the unfinished work of my ancestors. Right back to my parents. I mean, I'm so grateful to my parents for raising me. And then there were some things that I wanted to do differently. But when you talk about presence, I think that this is something that even if you maybe lost even if something is lost, it's present in our mind. And so I want to express my real sorrow that my children's mom didn't feel cherished by me. But I want to say right now, I do cherish her. And I'm going to do I'm going to, go back to the original moment of our coming together, and the hopes and dreams and wishes we had for making a family that has never before been seen, on the earth. And
but like something, I wonder, it's really touching me is, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I got to go see Kiss at Madison Square Garden. And I've seen them many times, but I got to see them before everybody had a cell phone. So I actually got to enjoy the concert. I actually got to be in it. I actually got to be present. And I see a lot of people that go to shows now, they're so busy looking at their phone, taking a picture of the artist instead of actually being there and enjoying the artist. And they'll never look at that picture again, probably ever, in their phone. But they're just not being present. They're just taking pictures, they're streaming on Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, thank God I grew up when there wasn't any cell phones, and I got to enjoy these things and see these great performances like Kiss and Triumph and stuff like that. I think it's pretty amazing that I got to enjoy that, and my kids will never know that, of just going to a concert and enjoying the experience. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I don't know really what the connection is with what I was saying, but I want to make a connection here because it's about the potential, the potential in every moment to be connected to all the other moments and to repattern and to I love what you're talking about. I remember one time being in Petaluma, California, in a little theater, and I can't remember the name of it, but there was no seating, but it was an old like Art Deco theater, as I recall. And there was a swing band on the stage, and there was dancing. There was swing dancing. There was no seating, like I say, on the floor, but there was a crowd of people that made way, that made space for these two dancers in the middle, and they were like doing this swing dancing, and there was no cell phones, like you say, but I just remember having just this sense of like being in the middle of the spinning universe, like, oh my goodness, this is where it's happening. Like, who knew that human beings could move like this? And the band is jamming, and these people are just spinning around like the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And I was like, just the people in that room, who knows, maybe there were 100, 200 people. We were the only ones who were getting to experience that. But we were like, in a certain sense, like experiencing it for the whole world. And also, it's just a drop. Like, this is human creativity. This is human potential. Like, this could happen anytime, anywhere, and you wouldn't even know about it. So,
well, the only reason I was thinking about to what you were talking about was because that's the way me and my wife, we keep our relationship going. Like, we took our kids on Broadway this week. We took them to go see Little Shop of Horrors on Broadway. And it was great because there was no phones and everybody was there having a good time. And it was amazing that I'm just holding my wife's hand as we're watching our kids enjoying something that most adults don't ever get a chance to do, is actually go to a Broadway show and not having to worry about taking pictures and all this stuff. So that's where I think I connected. It was just me and my wife holding hands, going to all these things and doing all these things instead of buying a new watch. We rather go to a Broadway show or go see Barry, or you know what I mean, or go on a trip somewhere on a cruise. And I think that's what keeps our marriage strong, is because that's the things that we choose to do with our time and our money. Mm-hmm. So the last couple of minutes, the last 20 minutes, I think the marriage, from what I've heard, it fluctuates between 50 and 60, maybe even higher divorce rate in America today. Like I said, I've had 2 practice marriages. I got the third one right, so I'm sticking with her. And If she ever decides to leave me, I'm going with her. But what happens when you get to the point where, okay, this is not going to work? It's time to separate. It's time to get divorced. Then what do you do?
So yeah, if you have tried and failed in your marriage, you don't want your child to fail. I mean, nowhere is it written that just because your marriage fails, that your child has to have, all of the turmoil that will inevitably happen if you don't focus on their best interest. So, I mean, I would say the first thing to do if you're going to be, so those are the folks that I work with, folks who are concerned about their child. They know that their marriage isn't working, but they don't want their child to suffer, because we know that oftentimes that's who ends up suffering the most is the children. So, what do most people do when they get a divorce? I mean, who's an expert in divorce before they've been through one, right? So, but professionally, it's the lawyers. People say, oh, well, you better talk to a lawyer. And then once you get the lawyers involved, then what are you talking about? Mostly you playing the blame and shame game. It's like, oh, who started it? Who was the worst? It's like jockeying for, distribution of, well, basically your marriage is a trust, right? And when the trust dissolves, if you have a marriage license, the state has to determine, how the trust will be divided. And oftentimes we think about this in terms of time with children and assets, but the problem about going to the family courts is that they're built on creating controversy, and the more controversy, the better, because then they have something to argue about, to continue to argue about. It's like how the courts make their money. We have a system. The family court system is a $90 billion a year industry. It's more than all the other areas of law combined. And there's an incentive in the family court system to award time with children to the low income earner, a financial incentive, because through Title 4D funding in the United States of America, that's how our family court systems are how our local courts are funded. They get 66 cents on the dollar to administer child support. So once you go, so we, there's talk of the best interest of the child, but really it's all, that ends up being secondary. So what I would say, if I remember your original, question correctly, is like, what then? What if the marriage fails?
Well, yeah, because like I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, where I know if I'm a male and I've got 3 children and I'm going for a divorce, excuse my language, guys, but I know I'm fucked. I know that I'm going to get fucked 3 ways from Sunday. I've got one friend of mine, he's paying over $4,000 a month in child support for 2 kids. And I think men, I talked about this I'm part of a group called the Mental Health Warriors. A lot of men are just going to say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to stay married. I'm going to be broke either way. So I'm just going to stay married so I don't have to pay child support. And that's when you get into a lot of drinking and a lot of domestic violence.
Right.
But do you hear that a lot where men are just like, I'm screwed if I do, and I'm screwed if I don't?
Well, I think mostly what I hear is that is after, once people know that they're headed for divorce, they know they're screwed. They're screwed then. But here's the good news. Most people work it out, even with with the high divorce rate that we have. It's about 5% of the of families that end up in the court system, asking the courts to solve their problems for them. So that's good news. And really, right now, it's like 21% of the people who are eligible to, for help, I guess you would call it, for this child support enforcement. Not everybody is going through the court system, and the less that we do, the better.
Okay, so now I see that you're good with statistics and facts, which I'm not. What is the percentage? Because I don't know. I personally don't know any man that is getting paid child support from a woman. How many women are actually paying child support out there?
I don't know. I just know, but like, let's look at Texas, where it's in, and I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's high 90% that the majority of the custody goes to women. Again, this is just, it's not actually, people think, oh, it's so sexist. They're saying that the men aren't, good enough care providers, or who knows what, people just think it's sexist against men that they have to pay this child support, and that well, hey, even if you have 50-50 custody, if a man makes more money than a woman, they're going to pay child support. Even with 50-50 custody, they're going to pay child support. So it's the system is built to destroy families. Unfortunately, it's incentivized ever since Bill Clinton signed that Title 40 legislation into law in the 90s. And it was the welfare to work legislation. It was supposed to take care of the deadbeat dads and everything. But what it did was it created an incentive for the family courts to award the custody to the low income earner. And it's not sexist against men any more than, what it really is we live in a society where there's a wage gap, where men make more money than women. So this is just exploiting the problem of sexism in our country. It's not against men or against women. It's against everybody. Sexism hurts every single person. And now, this is just a way. It's like, you've heard that phrase, like, follow the money. That's what's happening here. And the courts have wide discretion. They don't really, even though there are many Supreme Court decisions that will point to the sanctity of the family and the rights, the equal rights of mothers and fathers to be with the children that they made from their own bodies and souls, that the children have a right to have that ongoing relationship with their parent, even though that's been in the Supreme Court. How do you get that to the Supreme Court? I mean, every day in America, 4,000 children are separated from their parent in our archaic family court system. And when I went to, after 500 days without a hearing, during the pandemic, when there were no mediators available because of COVID, they said. So we have a temporary emergency ex parte order. In my case, a temporary emergency ex parte order. Mom said, that she had to have full custody because our kid didn't want to talk to me. No, actually, Mom, specifically what she said she was flabbergasted. This is her request for order to the judge. She was flabbergasted that I had raised concerns about my child's safety and that my child didn't want to. So 500 days later, without a hearing, we finally show up at the hearing, and the judge says, "Oh, so what are we doing here?" And I was flabbergasted at that point. I said, "Well, it says right here, we're here on the father's objection to the judge's orders because there was no legal basis for it. There was nothing there are criteria in the California Family Code for a temporary emergency ex parte order, and none of those criteria had been met." He said, "Oh yeah, we're not going back." I said, "What do you mean we're not going?" He said, "We're going to do a de novo hearing on best interest of the child. We're not going to do that." He didn't want to do the hearing on the temporary emergency ex parte order, which had no legal basis. He wanted to make something up entirely. I said, "I object." He said, "Let's go off the record." He said, yeah, I can do whatever I want. Now, that was the most chilling thing I've ever heard. Judge Richard DiStasso, famous for being the lead prosecutor in the murder trial of Scott Peterson for his pregnant wife, Lacey. He's a community hero. But on the other hand, now he's a family court judge who will tell you he can do whatever he wants, and he will do whatever he wants. And I ran out of money. I went from $0 to $243,000 into debt in the space of 2 years, and went all the way up to the appellate court with this. And the appellate court said that he didn't abuse his discretion, that basically he could do whatever he wanted. They never did say what I did or didn't do. But and then in the background, you've got all of this like supposed idea, like my kid doesn't want to talk to me because supposedly I'm transphobic. They were led to believe that through this dysfunctional dynamic that is perpetuated through the adversarial family court system. Where, okay, so wait, did I get off track here?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking to myself because I'm like, man, that's a lot. But I'm thinking an emergency order, but 500 days. That's a little bit slow on the emergency. But I was thinking about how many marriages probably wouldn't happen if the guy and the girl say, "Listen, we're going to sign prenups before we even get engaged. Before we do get married, we're going to sign prenups right here before we get married." How many marriages would not happen if it got to that point? And I think that makes a lot of sense for people to say, "Listen, if we love each other enough, we're not worried about the money. Let's just sign a prenup." I don't think half the marriages wouldn't even happen if there was a prenup in the beginning. What are your thoughts on prenup?
Oh, it's funny you should say, because just recently I've had a number of people. I described to them what I do. That how moms and dads, sometimes their marriages fail, and then the kids suffer more than anyone. Well, what I do is I help them put together a child custody portfolio so that even if their marriage fails, their child doesn't have to. And so I'm explaining this to a couple of people recently, and they said, "Oh, wait, so this is like a prenuptial agreement for the children." Really? And it's like, I love that they said that, because I can't think of a better way to say it, but that's exactly what I'm talking about here. A lot of times a prenuptial agreement will talk about assets, this is the assets that we have going into the marriage, and here's how they will be protected in the event of the marriage dissolving. And then there's a lot of lip service paid in our family court system. It's a big amorphous concept, this idea of the best interest of the child. Mostly this comes down a lot of times to hearsay, allegation, blame and shame, parents pointing the fingers at each other, talking about how the other parent isn't fit, and that therefore they shouldn't have this is in the 5% of the people who end up in the courts. Okay, this is not everybody, but this is with the problem people, of which I am one. I'm in one of those one of these, what we call a high conflict divorce. But yeah, what we really need more than anything, since contract is king in America, and the courts won't be able to, divide, to put their nose into our business, and to divide our estates in the interest of the state, so that the state makes their 66 cents on the most dollars. and does whatever they want. If we have a contract that talks about the best interest of the child before, then we can protect our child. Then we can set up a family trust is one way to do it, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be in a trust. We can create an agreement that will incentivize positive co-parenting behavior, and that when parents are supporting a relationship between their child and the other parent, that we could put financial incentives. We could have financial incentives attached to that in a prenuptial agreement that would that we can decide in advance, and instead of like after the fact having the court come in and pick over the, it's like carrion, like like a vulture, like looking over the remains of a marriage, and then pulling whatever resources, pulling the resources out of it. We can protect our resources. So this is my whole thing, is just keeping families out of the family courts.
So then if we need help, how can we get help, and how can we get in touch with you and get into your ecosystem?
Okay, so before you see a mediator, if you want to go to see a mediator, that's okay. But what are you going to do when you go to see a mediator? Are you going to start the blame and shame game, or do you want to talk about some actual evidence, some facts and evidence? And that's what I help people to do. Is I help them to put together a timeline, basically a before and after picture, good times, bad times, but like at the same time, what is happening with the child? And we can look at child behavior. We know that past behavior is a good predictor of future behavior unless something changes. And if the kids are suffering already from the marital conflict, then perhaps a change is needed. And so I can help people determine what change may be needed for their child before they go to see a mediator. That way, when they go to see a mediator, they have, and we can, like you say, I'm good with statistics. Well, part of that is just from many of my mentors have helped me to look at child behavior, and from a career, 30 years in the field of early care and education, and looking at psychometrically validated assessment tools for parent-teacher interactions. I can create a one-page summary of observations of child behavior over a period of time that can help parents to make decisions about what they need to do so that their child has a quality of life that they're to support positive pro-social behavior for their children and to support relationships.
Is there a website that we can go to?
Oh yeah, certainly. So you can go to familylegacysystem.com is the website that I'm using right now, because this focuses on the financial destruction, helping parents, protect their estate from family court jurisdiction, protect their and to be able to pass on a legacy of prosperity to future generations, even after their marriage fails. Also, this is all under the auspices, though, of the Interaction Focused Family Institute, and that is another website where you can find me at interactionfocused.com. And yeah,
I love it. And Joe Nicasio, thank you so much for putting us together. Celsius Energy, thank you for keeping me energized and keeping me motivated and focused. Now, I did promise that at the end I was going to drop a bomb that nobody knows about yet, but my brother Nathan is the first one to know. At March 1st, me and Joe Nicasio are holding our own. We're going to be having a webinar. It's called the Business Battlefield Plan, and we're going to help people from to go from thought of starting a business to profit in 90 days, guaranteed, working with me and Joe. And it's going to be less than probably a good meal out somewhere. So you make sure you hold on for that. Check that out. I'll be talking about that a lot. And guys, like, I'm a big fan of Joel Osteen. Something that he says is every morning when we wake up, we have a choice. We can be the victim or the victor of our present and our future, no longer a victim of our past. And if you're a winner like Nathan and I, you guys show up every week. You guys take our advice and you change your life and your family's lives. And guys, if you're going through divorce or possibly going through divorce, definitely check out Nathan. He's a great person to have in your life. He's a great person to have on your side when you're about to go into battle. Because when sometimes if you want to survive a battle, you have to go into somebody that's already been through battles. And my brother Nathan has been through plenty, and he's come out stronger and better than ever. Nathan, my brother, thank you so much for coming on today and hanging out. I love and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Richard, so much.
I love it, guys. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys.
Focus up. That's my little tagline too. In interaction focused, focus up.
Amen. All right, brother. Love you.
Okay, love you too.